your thoughts on this and what this means for free speech going forward?
Well, my first question, which company are we talking about, Twitter or Titter? Because he did say he was going to take out the W.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 311. Thank you all so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week, and I apologize that we weren't with you last week, but we are full force with Clinging to God and Guns today because we are joined again by the pistol-packing padre himself, Pastor John Bennett. Pastor, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. It's been a while.
It has, and lots of things have happened since we were last together. So, thought we would discuss some interesting stories that have come across the newswire in recent days. That all of them, believe it or not, you may wonder how these are all related, but they are in their own ways related to the gun debate. So fear not. This week's show, as is the case every week, though, is brought to you by the fine folks who are members of the Reformation Gun Club. Today, I want to give a special shout out to Dan from Indian Trail, North Carolina, who is a regular on our monthly online hangouts, Kevin from Fairfax, Missouri, Calroy from Boron, California, John from Spokane, Washington, Frank from Lake City, Michigan, Vincent from Tulare, California. I know for years I mispronounced that. Eric from Buckeye, Ohio, Tony from Little Elm, Texas, and Kevin from Marion, Iowa. Thank you all for your support. If you would like to help support the show, because we are listener funded, we don't have any advertising, we don't have any sponsors. If you would like to find out what this whole Reformation Gun Club thing is all about and get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content and access to our monthly online hangouts, like I mentioned, and some cool Armed Lutheran swag, check out all the benefits, all the membership tiers at armedlutheran.us/gun club. Or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. All right, as I said, today we are catching up on some big news stories that are related to the gun rights debate and to discussions that we've had in previous episodes. The first, as we've discussed at some length, is the censorship that routinely faces conservative and Christian voices in social media. So let's talk about the big tech takeover by that evil, rascally billionaire Elon Musk, who has now purchased in its entirety the social media platform Twitter. What was it, 44 or $46 billion?
Something like that.
And he says he intends to take the company private and open it up to all voices and end all the shadow bans and censorship and all that good stuff. It all sounds wonderful. And the best part, of course, has been the freak out on the left, which was just absolutely glorious. Your thoughts on this and what this means for free speech going forward?
Well, my first question, which company are we talking about, Twitter or Titter? Because he did say he was going to take out the W.
There have been so many memes with, I'm going to buy next this thing, now I'm going to buy Coca-Cola next and put the cocaine back in. And
I want them to buy Planned Parenthood and turn them all into crisis pregnancy centers, but
that would be fantastic.
It's not going to happen, but, I can dream, can't I?
I'm encouraged. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic because, nothing's changed yet. So, because he hasn't fully taken over the company.
Right.
I think that's supposed to happen in the next few months. So I'm not planning on getting back into that sewer that is Twitter until I see some concrete changes.
I'm tempted to go on there just to troll liberals right now, especially all the people that are wetting themselves over the big tech takeover. It's okay when that I can't think of his name now, the jerk off that owns Amazon.
Jeff Bezos,
or Jeff Bezos, as I say. And it's okay when he buys the Washington Post, but it's not okay when Elon Musk buys Twitter.
Yeah, that was amusing to see Bezos kind of chide Musk, suggesting that a rich multi-billionaire with ties to China has taken over one of the biggest social media platforms, and the resounding response was, "Dude, you literally own a company that sells cheap Chinese crap."
Yes. Right. Well, another one was Bill Gates.
Oh God.
Who I believe is one of the most evil people on the planet. This is the guy, and racist too. This is the guy who wanted population control in Africa because those Africans are having too many babies.
Mm-hmm.
But he was going on about Elon Musk and his dedication to the environment, and Musk was like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Tesla is a quote unquote green company.
We make electric cars for crying out loud."
Yes. Do you still have all the short options that you have on Tesla stock right now? Because evidently, Bill Gates has taken out a short option on a Tesla stock, which would hurt Tesla. So,
nice.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing that, when we were talking in previous episodes about, disconnecting and getting away from social media, which many of us have tried as best we can to do. It never, one of the things that the response to complaints about censorship on these platforms was, well, just go create your own, right? It's a private company. Go create your own Twitter. And why nobody thought prior to this was, well, don't we on the right, don't we in conservative circles have some billionaires out? I'm not saying Musk is a conservative, but don't we have some billionaires out there who could buy their own social media companies instead of trying to build one from scratch? There have been the MeWes and the Parlors or Parlays or whatever, and Truth Social, which is just a horrible name. But there's all that stuff out there. Why not just beat them at their own game and do what Musk has done and buy it right out from under him?
Right.
Why do we have to go create something else, something new? Why can't we just buy it?
Yeah, going from build your own Twitter to buy your own Twitter, which clearly he has.
Nobody expected that was coming. Now, as I said, Musk is not a conservative. He is, if anything, at best, he is a libertarian. He is concerned about free speech. But it's funny to hear all the libs freaking out about how Musk is going to be bad for free speech because he thinks you should be able to say whatever you want.
Right. Yes. It's absolutely mind-boggling that they're afraid that speech is going to be under attack now because you have someone who has promised not to use censorship on what is supposed to be allegedly a free speech platform.
Right. Yeah, irony is not something that works with libs very well. They just don't get it.
No, and half the time they manufacture irony accidentally without even being intelligent enough to realize they have.
One of the things that Musk has proposed, and I wanted to get your take on this, because I think I'm not sure how he's going to do it, but I like the idea in principle, is the idea that all members are going to have to be verified.
Yes.
Now, that's certainly going to be an end to all the bots and the fake accounts, which is undoubtedly good for the platform. because I think it makes the platform more civilized, hopefully.
And I don't know if these are changes that have taken place because he has already given orders to make these changes. But there were reports that almost immediately you had some liberals who were losing thousands of followers while there were conservative commentators that with accounts on Twitter that were suddenly gaining thousands of followers. And the working theory was that their algorithm was intentionally suppressing conservative personas on their platform while overinflating these liberals with fake accounts and fake followers. So
that's just more proof that we need to get rid of the bots and the fake accounts. And I like the idea that everybody's got to be verified because it's so easy. Part of the reason I hate Twitter is it's so easy to create an account, hide behind some fake name, and then go around and be as nasty as possible to your digital neighbors. And there's no repercussion for it. Now, if you got to be verified, what's his name? The college dropout in his basement, the keyboard commando, is he going to pony up go through the effort or whatever it takes, jump through the hoops to be verified? And I doubt they will. There's going to be a lot who will just, Mom won't pay for it.
It's like the policy has become, you can be as big of an a-hole as you want. You just can't do it anonymously anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I'm misinterpreting that. That's the first thing that comes to mind when it's talking about everybody has to be verified. Perhaps it's just for public personalities that they have to be verified or something. I don't know.
My only concern with the whole verified thing is how they might verify. Like, are you going to have to pony up a bunch of personally identifying information? We talked in those episodes about protecting your personal info and trying to keep as much of your personal info off the online world and out of social media. I'm not sure if they want you to send in a photo of your driver's license or something, that I want Twitter being in charge of that, even with Elon Musk at the head.
And of course, we have no idea how this is going to play out. I think of how the libs of TikTok, the lady behind that, this Orthodox Jewish woman, was recently doxxed, and by this Taylor Lorenz, who was whining and complaining about how people are going after her on a personal basis on the internet while she doxes people that she doesn't like.
Garbage human being.
Yes, absolutely. She is. I mean, there's like the gutter, and then there's the sewer, and she's somewhere below that. But if this verification process that they're going to use, if this is to verify you, the individual, on their servers without revealing publicly, your legal name and so forth, I would be okay with that. If there is some sort of guarantee of confidentiality to your identity that, hey, we're doing this because we want to make sure that we don't have people with more than one account.
Right.
So that if they do something that violates our terms of service, they're not just hopping over to their parallel account and using that to, continue being a piece of garbage on, social media. So
yeah,
if that's what it is, I would be supportive of that. That, hey, we're only allowing one account per person, and we need to verify you and cross-check it against our database to make sure that you don't have any other accounts with us.
Yeah, like I say, in principle, I like this idea because that would clean up a lot of the discourse. It would make, I think, Twitter wields a lot more, the left wields a lot more influence because of the fake accounts and the spam bots, because they're able to just bombard politicians and companies with their propaganda to push a political narrative that really isn't popular in the general public, and it creates this misconception that, oh, well, whatever this is that they're harping about, lots of people are interested in it, so we better go green, or we better put, rainbow flags on our product packaging or whatever. And the reality is very different when, 90% of the spam is probably coming from 10% of the accounts. And this all ties back. The reason we're talking about this is because this ties back to the gun debate, because we have seen so often the voices in the 2A community being silenced or shadow banned or suspended or having their reach throttled simply because they are on the right, simply because they're pro-gun. And hopefully Musk follows through with his plans to open things up, and we actually have honest and fair debate again on that platform.
Yeah. The censorship that has taken place, we already know that the censorship that they've been engaging in swayed the outcome of the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Because what was it? 17% of Biden voters said they would have changed their vote had they known about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yep.
A story which
they completely sank that story.
Yes. Well, they locked the account of the New York Post for putting out their article showing all this stuff. 17%, last time I checked, is far more than enough to change the outcome of an election.
It certainly, depending on where that 17% was, definitely could. It definitely could have. Yeah.
I mean, if that 17% was like in, San Francisco, probably not.
Probably not.
But if it was in states like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Georgia or Arizona, where the margin was, and I'm
ridiculously close.
Yes, and I'm still leaning heavily towards the side of fraud. Don't know if you've heard of this or if our audience has, but the movie that's going to be released from Dinesh D'Souza, 2,000 Mules, where it uses basic forensic methods of tracking these 2,000 plus individuals who dropped off tens of thousands of ballots in various ballot drop boxes in various cities in these battleground states. Don't tell me there wasn't any fraud, that it was the most legitimate election in history.
Yeah. 81 million votes, folks. 81 million votes.
Yes. The guy who didn't come out of his basement suddenly happened to get 15 million more votes than Barack Obama.
Right. So, yes, the house plant is more popular than a guy with the charisma of Obama. I'm not buying that for a minute. All right. So next story that I wanted to bring up, let's talk about ghost guns. First off, before we get into it, ghosts are not real.
The Holy Ghost is.
The Holy Ghost is, but neither are ghost guns. This is another one of their manufactured, made-up terms like assault rifle. What we're talking about, for those who don't know, we're talking about guns that are made from unfinished kits. You buy the parts, you finish the receiver, the part, the frame that you have to put everything in, that usually holds the trigger group, is not finished. You have to actually use tools to finish it up and put the whole thing together. And if you do it wrong, it blows up in your face. But
or
Biden,
it simply won't function.
Or it won't function. And Biden wandered out somehow. They directed him out to the Rose Garden. Was it before Easter? It was. It was like a week before Easter, wasn't it? And somehow he walked out there with a Polymer 80 kit. And as I recall, Washington, D.C. has restrictions on ghost guns, so I'm not sure exactly how he got that. But I'm sure it's fine. Senile old guy wandering around with a ghost gun. No worries. So he rambles on about the scourge of ghost guns and how it's driving crime and how easy it is to assemble these kits. which is ironic coming from a guy who can't easily put two coherent sentences together, talking about how easy it is to assemble a gun from one of these kits. And then he went on and talked about how terrible and horrible this is because it's just so easy to assemble.
Yeah. As far as easy to assemble, number one, you have to have the proper tools. Number two, you have to have the intelligence and the ability. Number three, you have to not screw it up. And it's a time-consuming process. You know, I know people who have made functioning AR-15s out of 80% receivers. And it wasn't exactly an easy thing to do.
If you have the aptitude that kind of whatever that gene is that allows you to just sort of figure things out and put them together,
yes.
And you have, like you said, you have the tools to do it. Yeah. But most people, I don't have that gene. I'm sure I could do it, but I can't do it in 30 minutes. Like some people have suggested.
Sure. You can do it in 30 minutes if you have a CNC machine capable of milling it within 30 minutes.
If you've got the machinery, if you've got a drill press and a lathe, you can do it pretty quick. If you're good with a Dremel tool, you could do it in probably 30 minutes. I wouldn't trust it if you don't have that aptitude with tools that I clearly don't have. And what I thought was interesting, and I had forgotten about this story. I guess it was done kind of oddly in conjunction with, they just happened to be doing this story about the same time that Biden comes out with these proposals. This reporter, Vaughn Hilliard from the NBC affiliate in New York, he does this hit piece where he's suggesting that these kits are as easy to put together as furniture from IKEA. And so he wants to prove it. So they go to Pennsylvania to a gun show. He and his producer, they buy a kit and all the parts, and then they weren't able to put it together because it was too hard.
They bought an expensive paperweight.
Exactly. So again, irony not being, something that liberals can grasp. It didn't dawn on them that maybe the premise of their story that these are so easy to do may not be true because they themselves failed. They then went and contacted the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania. And the Attorney General took the gun back to Pennsylvania to the Attorney General's office, and they had an agent finish the gun for them. And then they took it back to New York. Oh, gosh.
Which I'm sure they violated some sort of law for the state of New York in doing that.
They violated not only the law in New York about that is they have laws against unserialized firearms, but 18 U.S. Code 923 says that if an individual intends to make a firearm for somebody else, they have to be a licensed manufacturer.
Yes. And that's one of the things I was going to mention that earlier, that you can't take your 80% kit and have someone else make it for you.
Right. Yes.
If you do, you have committed a federal felony.
Yeah, there's no law against, and it's always been legal since the beginning of the Republic, to make guns for your own personal use. That's never been a problem.
Yes.
Once you go and have somebody else do it for you, like this idiot did, you violated federal law.
Right.
And I'm guessing because the federal and the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office broke federal law as well, because I'm guessing they're probably not a licensed manufacturer.
Yeah. And I think the federal statute is something like a 10-year prison sentence for something like that.
It's not cheap.
No, it's not. That just boggles my mind that I hadn't heard that story.
It gets worse.
Oh, it does. Oh, gosh.
Yes. Because not only in 18 Section 923 did they violate the law, they also broke the law in 18 Section 922 that makes it illegal for you to transfer a firearm to somebody in another state. So not only did they create an unserialized firearm for somebody without the manufacturer license, they gave it to somebody from another state without a background check, which they would have failed because they're not from Pennsylvania. Even if the attorney general had done the background check, they would have been denied. Then they broke the law further. The reporter did by transporting it across state lines. That violates federal law, and then they violated the the New York law against unserialized firearms. So it's a complete cluster, but nothing's going to be done about it.
Yeah, right. Well, something will be done about it if they were Republicans.
But yeah, so if you're on the right, you can't get away with this kind of. I mean, they will go after you for even the slightest potential infraction of the law. This guy broke law after law, federal law and state law, and it's fine. It's no big deal because this is how breaking the law to prove how we need more gun laws is exactly what they do on the left.
Exactly.
So, and this is all supposedly because ghost guns are turning up at so many crime scenes, right? Supposedly this is the scourge that's driving the epidemic of violence around the country.
And I think I just heard the statistic when that story about trying to, this banning of ghost guns and so forth came out. I believe it's something like 0.06% of
crime scene firearms.
Yes. 0.06. That's 6 out of every 1,000 cases. No, I'm sorry.
So what?
That's 6 out of
0.06%.
I think that's 6 out of every 10,000. Yeah.
It's so, I mean, cynically, if you boil it down, this is really just about throwing out some red meat to bolster the support of Biden's gun control supporters, because it really is not going to have any meaningful effect on crime.
No.
And also by trying to pretend that you're tough on crime without actually being tough on crime.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to do a door-to-door search in gang territory in South Chicago for illegal firearms, but we're going to try and ban the sale of 80% receivers. But what's next then? You've got a chunk of billet aluminum, and they're going to consider that a firearm now? Because if you have the ability to turn an 80% receiver into a functioning firearm, then it's not that much of a jump to take a block of solid aluminum and do the same thing.
If you have the skill and the equipment, you can certainly do it. And then there's a few thoughts, some notes I jotted down just thinking this through. The idea of gun kits, this idea of ghost guns, so-called, where you can buy all the parts and put them together, it's relatively a new idea, right? So it's really not that big a surprise that they're going to turn up more often in crime scenes than in previous years as this becomes more common. That's not a real surprise. How many of the ghost guns were actually, this is the question that they never seem to answer is how many of those ghost guns are actually made by the criminals using them?
Right.
As opposed to having been stolen by those criminals.
I would, if I was a betting man, I would say that at least 99% of all ghost guns are manufactured by hardcore hobbyists who are already lawful firearm owners.
Yes, I would agree. It's a very high percent.
And a lot of it has to do with the simple fact that the amount of skill and the cost of the tools and the time involved to make one of these and have it function reliably, it's a whole lot easier for the gangbanger in the ghetto to get a drop gun from, Jimmy down the street and pay $200-300 for that gun than it is to go through all the trouble to manufacture a firearm out of basically a chunk of aluminum.
Yes. The vast majority of crime guns are either stolen, bought illegally from other criminals, or acquired from family members, which is also a crime.
Yes.
Because you're just basically transferring a firearm to a criminal.
Right.
It's not that these kits are cheap. If you make one of these things, you're not saving money over going and buying one off the shelf. So it comes down to the serial number then, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing this, we're going to all this trouble just to produce a firearm that doesn't have a serial number. So wouldn't it just be easier to, like you said, get one of these drop guns or one of these guns that they stole and just grind the serial number off?
Yeah, it'd be a lot less work. And chances are, if you really wanted to, you could get one with the serial number ground off already.
Yeah, exactly. If you're getting it from one of your gang member friends, it's probably already there. And so that leads to the obvious question, which is, how many crimes are actually solved based on the serial numbers found on crime guns?
Very, very few.
I'm going to guess, considering that we put murderers and repeat criminals back on the street with little or no bail as it is, we're not really prosecuting anybody anymore. I'm guessing that number is statistically zero.
Yes, because all they're going to do, they run the serial number and, oh, that gun was stolen. Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, that would then allow states that have safe storage laws to go back and check to see if the owners reported them stolen. And if they didn't, they can prosecute the gun owner as opposed to actually prosecuting the actual criminal.
Right. So you prosecute the law-abiding guy who made the mistake of not reporting it. Now, and I would, and of course, I don't know these statistics, but I can't imagine a law-abiding gun owner not reporting a firearm stolen.
Right. Unless, of course, I mean, I could see a situation where you have a big gun collection.
Yeah.
And, it's somebody takes the gun and they steal it from you without your knowledge and you don't even look. I mean, I could imagine, honestly, there are 3 or 4 guns in my safe that if someone were to actually go and steal and close the safe back up without, leaving any sign that there was any undue action taken, I might not notice for a while.
Yeah, same here.
Because I have some guns that are not guns that I shoot, that are and they're sentimental, that I have in the back of the safe that I don't take out to practice with. And if those got gone, if somebody just figured out my combination and snuck in and opened the safe and took them away, I might not notice for a while.
Right.
All right. Now, biggest news, maybe in the last 50 years, I think, not Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. We're talking, of course, about the leaked draft of what appears to be Judge Samuel Alito's majority opinion in an upcoming abortion case called Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Center. And the draft suggests that, and the court has since not denied, in fact, I think they have not directly confirmed, but in their wording of a statement from Chief Justice John Roberts, is basically, he didn't deny that this was actually an opinion. And so he's essentially confirmed that the Supreme Court is poised to not only rule in favor of upholding the abortion restrictions in Dobbs, but also to strike down Planned Parenthood versus Casey and Roe versus Wade. And that's just absolutely huge.
Yes, it is. It's mind-blowing. It is something that brings, when I first heard about that, I had tears of joy. But I'm also still apprehensive that this leak was for one purpose and one purpose only: to create a public threat to the justices in the hopes that one of them will change their opinion.
Yes. Absolutely. And whoever leaked this, now I've seen a couple of commentators online who said when they were clerks that the one thing that they was made clear to them, if you leak anything that's done behind closed doors, your career is over. You're done. You're going to lose your law license. You will never work in the law again.
Right. Yeah.
If this was encouraged by one of the members on the court, and I could see a couple of them that might, they need to be impeached.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And some people might think this is taking it a little bit too far, but in my mind, this is an act of treason, because it is an act that was intended to thwart the lawful functions of a major branch of the federal government and to bring chaos to our governmental system.
January 6th doesn't even hold a candle to this.
No. I mean, that was, especially if you factor in the participation by FBI informants with January 6th, or I should say alleged.
Well, even right, but even without the alleged involvement of the FBI, those droogs had absolutely no chance of overturning the government or overturning the outcome of the election.
Right. And last time I checked, the only person that got killed on January 6th was an Air Force veteran shot by a Capitol Police officer.
Yes.
Who happened to also be an unarmed Air Force veteran.
Yes.
So, and a woman, since all this is about attacks on women. What about that woman?
Well, since men can be women, I guess the police officer, it was potentially a woman on woman crime. I mean, how dare we suggest?
How dare we assume the officer's gender?
That's right, exactly. So, and this is beautifully written. The parts of it that I've read, I've not read the whole thing. Roe wrote, Justice Alito was egregiously wrong from the start, which is absolutely true. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant to the plainly incorrect. Until the latter part of the 20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. Zero, none.
Yes. Up until 100 years ago, it was flat out banned in all 50 states. Well, not all 50, because I think Hawaii and Alaska hadn't become a part of the United States at that point. But 100 years ago, this was a crime in every state in the country.
60 years ago.
Yeah, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
I think the first laws that permitted abortion weren't until the early 60s. And they were only under very specific circumstances.
Alito said that Roe imposed the same highly restrictive regime on the nation and effectively struck down the abortion laws of every single state. Therefore, the inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions, and obviously it needs to be struck down. So I was like you. I was just stunned when I heard this. Positively stunned. At first, I was like, "This has got to be a joke, right?" I mean, I know there was all the talk about. You remember when they had the oral arguments about this?
Yeah.
And some of the questions from the justices came out, and there was great hand-wringing because they didn't seem to. The questions that were coming from the conservative judges seemed to suggest that not only were they in favor of this restriction in the state of Mississippi, but also potentially striking down Roe. And there was great gnashing of teeth and clutching of pearls. But I really didn't think it was going to happen.
No.
I thought that they'd come up with some mushy middle ground.
Yeah, I was expecting them to come down with the ruling that it would be permissible for states to place restrictions within a certain window on abortions. That would, in a way, would uphold, allow Mississippi to have their law banning abortion after 15 weeks, but would still permit other states to allow it up until the point of birth. That's what I was expecting. Is just setting a precedent that would let other states who chose to place prohibitions or restrictions to do so. I was not expecting there to be a complete reversal of Roe, but really this is the constitutionally correct position, that this is a decision that should rest solely within the states. Because if you look at the Roe v. Wade decision, the decision is indistinguishable from a legislative act that a state may take. It reads like a piece of legislation, not like a Supreme Court majority opinion.
Yeah, it is terribly reasoned, and it absolutely destroyed the right of individual states to make up their own minds about. It destroyed the federalist idea of how these kinds of divisive issues should be adjudicated. That is, the individual voters in the individual states should make up their own minds instead of cramming down the political preferences, the social preferences of the court on the entire country.
Well, and it created out of whole cloth this whole idea of a right to privacy.
That's the worst part.
There is no right to privacy even vaguely implied within the Constitution. And this right to privacy is something that is used as justification for teachers not telling parents that, hey, your son thinks he's a little girl. And, that now they believe they have this obligation to hide these kinds of things from the parents, that their prepubescent child somehow has a right to privacy that prohibits the parents from knowing their thoughts and feelings on a particular issue, especially when it comes to their child's, perceived identity that is incongruous with their biological reality. So, the implications that Roe v. Wade had upon our culture were so broad and so damaging, because they basically make the reality of objective morality invalid.
And the big lie, of course, that everybody is freaking out about is that somehow this is an end to abortion, which I wish it was, but it's not.
It simply allows individual states through their legislature to pass laws regulating abortion in those states.
Yeah. It just returns us to the status quo ante in 1972 or whatever,
and if you're
right?
so desperate to murder your unborn child and you live in a state where it's been prohibited, you can always get a Greyhound bus ticket to the nearest state that allows you to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You can still, despite all the complaining and whining from the left, if you still really are determined to kill your unborn child, you can do it. You just might have to drive a little longer to do it. And that just means that red states are going to get redder and blue states are going to get bluer because people are going to vote with their feet. Right. And this is the way it's supposed to be in a federalist system, right? Where it's this melting pot of all these different experiments, 50 different experiments. And that means if you're in Texas, you're going to have to, you're not going to be able to get an abortion as easily. If you're in New York, you can kill your kid the day it's supposed to be born.
And if there is something in place that causes a delay in a person making that decision and they then rethink it. I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
You live in a state that then bans abortion, and you decide to get an abortion. And on that bus trip to the nearest state that allows it, you start to think about, hey, what am I doing? If anything to prevent it from being a hasty decision, look, I'm all about preserving life at any cost. It's
the left is all in favor of waiting periods.
Right. What I find deeply saddening, and of course, this is just the left showing the world who they really are. How sad is it that so many, I shouldn't say so many, but a large number of people who have been given a microphone because of their position, their political convictions, that they're fighting so desperately to maintain a legal permissibility without any prohibition to murder children in the womb.
Chuck Schumer said it was the bedrock on which our country was founded.
I think our founding fathers would have been willing to fight a war to prevent something like this from ever becoming legal.
Yeah, I think so. I think they would be horrified by where the country is right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sadly, even though this is the way it's supposed to be, and that every state's going to decide, and so there's 16 states, I think, or 14, 16, that basically don't have very many restrictions at all on abortion. It's going to create abortion tourism.
Right.
And several governors have actually come out and encouraged people to come to their states because abortion will still be legal in their states.
California is they wanted to make an abortion sanctuary state where they're even talking about potentially providing for the travel costs for someone to come to their state to murder their child.
Amazon is offering their employees up to $4,000 for just that.
Oh my gosh.
So every time you purchase something at Amazon, you're paying the travel expenses for people to go and kill their kids. Just think how sick that is.
I was not aware of that.
Now there's something I saw yesterday that I wanted to get your take on real quick. I saw some rather odd and kind of sickening posts on social media from a Christian group on Facebook. It wasn't a Lutheran group. I think the thing was shared by a Lutheran friend, but it was another denomination. I'm not going to get into that. But there were people who were supposedly Christian women who were arguing against this decision by quoting verses from the Old Testament where God calls for the destruction of his enemies and specifically mentioning women and children, and as if that somehow justifies the legalization of abortion today.
That's a pretty sick way to try and justify your position. Yes, there are instances within the Old Testament where God commanded Israel to kill all the inhabitants of a city, regardless of age or sex. Mm-hmm. But number one, he's God, and we are not. Number two, there was a distinctive purpose for that command that God had given. And the purpose was to preserve Israel and the lineage of the coming Messiah. These were people who were so depraved that they engaged in such practices as the sacrifice of children. So it's ironic that they use these kinds of examples as the justification for murdering children, where in many of these cases, these people that God commanded Israel to kill engaged in the practice of sacrificing infants to false gods such as Moloch.
Yep.
But again, people who are going to argue this are pretty much biblically and historically illiterate in the first place.
That was the funny thing about it, because this one particular lady just kept spouting these verses, and then she said, maybe you should read your Bible instead of just, I was like, really? Nice try, but just because you can throw out a verse doesn't make you biblically literate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, as we've proven with our wonderful book, Duty to Defend. Shameless plug there. Sorry. and to kind of wrap this up, for those who are longtime listeners of the show, we talk about this issue a lot. And some who listen might complain that, hey, what does this have to do with gun rights? This social issue stuff is a distraction. We need to focus on defending the Second Amendment. And the important point to remember here when we do talk about this issue is that the right to life is really at the heart of the Second Amendment fight.
Yes.
The right to defend life, your families, your children, your neighbors from criminals and tyrants. And one of the sad legacies of Roe is the way that it cheapens life.
Yeah. If you can't argue that life in the womb matters, how can you argue that life outside of the womb matters too? And this is one of the sickest things about the pro-choice argument, that if you have a woman who's 30 weeks pregnant and at 30 weeks a child can survive outside of the womb, that if she's murdered but she wanted to have that child, that somehow that's a double homicide, which it should be. That's a human life. But that same woman could walk into a Planned Parenthood clinic and have her child killed the same day.
Yes.
That we only place a value on the life in the womb if the mother wants it. What about the 32 couples waiting for every one infant that's given up for adoption?
Yeah.
Along those same lines, right now, the West is in population decline. I just saw a map shared on Facebook that was color-coded for countries based on population growth. And that's just base reproduction numbers, life expectancy, age of the population, and so forth. Really, it was just Africa and some parts of the Middle East where they were above replacement numbers. That our population is in decline. Humanity is in decline. And one of the reasons we're in decline is because we've murdered 60 million human beings since Roe v. Wade.
Wasn't it last year? Was it last year that for the first time the United States fell below replacement levels?
Yeah.
The West is in decline because we have replaced God, essentially, with self.
Right.
And the morality, the sense of responsibility, the civic virtue that we in the West used to embody, we no longer do. We now, as Roe gloriously said, if a life's inconvenient, you can kill it to make your life better or to achieve your dreams or further your career or whatever. People who commit murder or attempt to, people who riot and loot and run over people with trucks and blow people up or think that it's okay to attack you because you think differently, they're no different. It's the same. It's the same mindset that you don't see certain people's lives as having value, so it's okay to remove them or to attack them. Right? You see them as some sort of an impediment to your goals, whether it's your career or whether it's your political goals. You just remove it, get it out of the way. It's the same sin that suggests that you can sell people into slavery, or you can round them up and put them in boxcars to send them to gas chambers, or you can rape them or shoot them on the streets of Ukraine, or hack them to death in the Middle East or Africa, or abort them in the womb. It's no different. It's a sick and evil form of dehumanization that places self over the needs of others.
At its root, it is satanic.
Yeah. And so it relates directly to the gun rights debate, because as we always say, pro-gun is pro-life. All right, we're probably well into second glass of scotch at this point. So a good time to wrap it up because we are well past an hour. Pastor, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's always wonderful to get together with you and discuss the latest or craziest issues.
Yes, absolutely. And we should always be sharpening our ability to reason and to debate these issues, because these are issues that are going to remain evergreen until Christ comes back. That these issues will remain in our culture because our culture is sick, it is lost, it is depraved. We live in a fallen world, and we, beyond the point of the Second Amendment, we as the children of God must be that light shining in the darkness of this world.
All right. Well, folks, if you have any questions about anything you heard here today, any comments, any complaints, or if you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, visit our website, check out the feedback page, armedlutheran.us/feedback. Leave us a voicemail or a voice message. We would love to hear from you and respond to you on a future episode, or take up whatever topic you might, depending on the topic, obviously, that you might suggest. Pastor, thank you again. Folks, we will be back next week with another fun-filled episode for episode 312. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback, or a review on iTunes, and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.